Alright, so I am finally back after a long hiatus to bring you guys a deck profile and tournament report from the North America WCQ. Now I know this is super late and I'm basically only posting this video because I know I will want to watch it in the future when I'm trying to remember what I played. So if you guys don't really care about a deck from last format, I understand you don't have to watch it, but if you are interested, go ahead, give it a watch. I played Paleo Frogs, and I went into this tournament with basically no expectations because I had not played at all for like probably 3 or 4 months. I had only played Duel Links preceding this, so I played Paleo Frogs because I had most of the cards. I just had to get a few, and it was at least playable for the format. There's no way I would be able to put together Zoo or True Draco, or much less learn how to play them. I at least understood Paleo Frogs, even though I wasn't really that good with it. And predictably, I didn't do the best, but I did alright. I ended up with 2 wins, 3 losses, and a draw over 6 rounds. And I ended up lasting longer than my friends that I carpooled with, so I did pretty decent actually, considering I had no expectations. I do have the sleeves and the die. I got the wind die. I was pretty happy about that because the color is really nice. I do not have the playmat with me because I hate how it looks. So I do still have the spiral playmat. I don't like it, so I don't use it. I did end up playing mostly Zoo, as I expected. My first 5 rounds were actually against a Zoo variant of some form, with 3 of them being pure Zoo, and then I played against a Pendulum Zoo variant, and I played against a True Draco Zoo variant, and then I played the mirror match, which in the 6th round, which is where my lack of experience playing the deck really came back to bite me. Up until that point, I think it was fine, as it was basically just use my traps and toad to try to stop my opponent's plays. But in the mirror, there's a lot of intricacies around trying to prevent your opponent from summoning their monsters and summoning the monsters yourself. And there was lots of little things that he was doing that I wasn't aware of before that hand. I just got smacked in that round. So for the deck profile, I think it was a pretty decent list actually. I threw it together on the spot. I wanted to play Paleo Volcanic Frogs, but Lewis talked me out of that and talked me into playing a better deck. I think it would have been cooler to play Volcanics in here, but I do think he was probably right that it wouldn't be as good. So for the monsters, got pretty standard. So 3 swaps, 3 dupes, and 2 Ronins. This is obvious, and yeah, that worked well for me. And then I'm also playing 2 barrier statues in the main. These actually were pretty good. They put in work. It was pretty good against Zoo decks, so I was happy with that choice. And then I played 1 Mexi in the main, which kind of obvious. And then for my spells, a huge spell line up here. Got 1 Regeki. That's it. I did think about playing the Dark Holes in the main, but I ended up with just the Regeki, and I don't remember if I drew it. I probably did. Yeah, I don't remember drawing it ever, so I might not have. And then for the Paleozoic traps, we've got Canadia and Deinamiscus and Olenoids, and then 2 Morella. And that's just the ones that everybody plays. This one isn't very good, but you need to play more than just 9. So yeah, you played that to get traps in the grave. This one's really good, obviously, and then this one is also... this one actually, it was kind of annoying sometimes having the discard cost, but it is good. And then Canadia was also really good. Book of Mooning was really good against like Zoo to just... If they only have 1 monster and if they can't get like a barrage to special summon, then Book of Moon can just stop them. And then for the non-paleo traps, I'm running 3 Reckless. This was awesome. I would recommend that. 2 Lost Wind. It was just okay. Yeah, it wasn't that great. 2 Abaco. It was fine. Nothing too special. You'll notice a pattern here. Most of these traps didn't really do that much aside from the broken traps and the paleos. 2 Magic Deflector. So going into the tournament, we were talking about it, and I realized that basically everybody would be playing in the main deck ton of quick play spells like Twin Twisters, which I definitely want to stop. I got wrecked by that a few times. And in addition to that, tons of people were main decking My Body's a Shield, Enemy Controller, cards like this. Basically tech options for the Zoo Mirror, but cards that I didn't want them to resolve against me either. And in addition to that, there was also like Dragonic Diagram, Barrage, tons of stuff that this negates. So I think this was a really strong choice going into the tournament. And actually, it would have been good if I drew it at the right times. But I only ever drew this when it had nothing to negate. And I never drew it when they activated Twin Twisters. So it's just a case of good in theory, but in practice, I never drew it at the right time. 1 Storming. I wanted to play more Stormings, but I only had 1. Lewis had Stormings, but his were bent, so I didn't feel comfortable playing bent cards at a WCQ. So I just played the 1 Storming, which I don't remember drawing. So, oh, by the way, I did borrow some of the frogs from Lewis. I think I borrowed all 6 of these. These are mine now. I got my own after that, but yeah, I think he let me those. I don't quite remember exactly which ones he let me, but I know he let me some cards. So thank you, Lewis, for that. Good thing I didn't forget that. And then I was running in the main 2 Anti-Spell and 1 Imperial Order. These were awesome. Yeah. Basically all the meta decks except Paleo wanted lots of spells to resolve, so they put in work. And then I was running counter traps, which don't work as well, but they're just so good. 3 strike and 1 warning, and yeah, these were good. What do you expect? So that's it for the main deck. And for the extra, I ran 3 Totally Awesome. I did end up making all 3 once. I ended up borrowing 2 of these from my friend Pavel, so shoutouts to him also for letting me borrow some cards. I definitely needed 3. Not much to say. This is a huge reason why the deck is good, because this card is just amazing. And these are all mine now. So yeah. Woohoo! So this one here, you'll notice, is from the Megaton. So I couldn't have had that before the tournament. I only had one of these 2. I can't tell which because they're identical. Yeah. Next up, we have 2 Paleo Opibina and 2 Paleo Anomalocaris. These have ridiculous names. I know I summoned both of these. I don't remember summoning a second one. I may have, but I don't remember doing that. These are really good also. Yeah, not much else to say. Would definitely recommend them. And then for the rest of the extra deck, the only thing I ever made the entire time was Zodiac Hammer Kong and Zodiac Trident, because I stole a Zodiac card and I made Trident. So yeah, this was an obvious decision going into the tournament, and it paid off. And for the other ones I didn't make, I had a Digesto Phoenix, number 45 Crumble Logos, the Prophet of Demolition. That thing. What a ridiculous name. And then Sky Cavalry Centuria and Cat Shark, and I never made any of them. And then I also played, for very situational situations, number F-Zero, Utopic Future, and Downward Magician, which I never made. In theory, this could like double. I could steal one of my opponent's things and stack something on top of it, but that never came up. And then my side deck was pretty good. So I had 3 Flying C's. Super obvious this was crazy good against Zoo. Unfortunately, Flying C is no longer good because they'll just use it for a Link Summon. Sad days. 3 Gamma Seal. Gamma Seal helped. I remember it helped a few times. I did play against a True Draco guy, so definitely want to be able to tribute this stuff. The 2 Dark Holes that I almost mained. I don't remember drawing these. Maybe I did. I don't remember. But yeah, I would side that in against True Draco also, because they're going to make it, if they can, they're going to make it immune to monsters and traps. I need spells to get rid of them, or the Kaijus. And True Dracos were pretty real at this tournament. They weren't hit by the ban list yet. 3 Twin Twisters. This was mainly for the mirror, which did come up. But I did not actually draw this in the mirror, unfortunately. And then 2 Unending Nightmare. I was playing this because of pendulums mostly. And it did actually come up that I played pendulums, and I did draw this card, and it was amazing. So yeah, it's a really good trap. You can also play it obviously against like any of the meta decks at that point, because it's good against Zoo and True Dracos, depending on what type of hand they have. So I almost mained it also. That's another card I thought about maining. Then 2 Mask Restrict for True Dracos, which I didn't draw. So that's it for my deck profile. And now I'll go through a brief tournament report, how all my rounds went. So round 1, I got paired up against Zoo, lost the roll. Game 1, I opened Max C, which stopped his play. But unfortunately on my turn, he had a strike, and he used this strike to stop my swap Frog's effect when I activated it. And I had no other monsters in my hand to have any other type of play. And I actually had 2 strikes myself, which I used to stop his play on the next 2 turns. But I didn't draw into any monsters in that time, and so I had nothing to stop him the next turn. So, Game 2, I managed to open with a Flying C, which stops his play. And I have a Swap Frog once again, and this time he can't stop my Swap Frog, because I'm going first. And he didn't have a hand trap, luckily. So I managed to use the Swap Frog to make a Toad, set traps. On his turn I dropped the Flying C, and I pretty easily won that game because he didn't have a way to get rid of the Flying C. And then Game 3, I opened Flying C again. And it was particularly good that I did this time because I was going second. I do open a Dupe Frog, which I set in defense mode, and he ends up using a Twin Twisters on my back row, and I don't have a way to recover from that really, so I end up just sitting on Dupe Frog in defense mode for like multiple turns. I don't remember quite how long, but it was a decent amount of time. And he didn't have a way to get rid of his Flying C in that time, luckily, so he just sat there also. But eventually I was able to draw into a Swap Frog and play out of it, because I was able to make a board before he was able to get anything going. So I ended up winning that 2-1, so I'm pretty happy winning my first round. And then round 2, I ended up getting played against Zoo again. What did you expect? So game 1 was actually pretty back and forth. So he ended up drawing no monsters in his opening hand. I ended up drawing just a barrier statue, and I poked with this a few times, and he eventually drew into a way to get over it, and I protected for a while actually, but I had run out of traps that can protect it, and so he kills it, and then after he kills it, he's able to just go off, and I was not able to make a Toad or anything during that time, so he ended up winning that, and that ended up taking about 30 minutes just for game 1. And then game 2, I opened up with an Imperial Order, and I used this to stop his barrage. And without his barrage, he can't really do anything significant, at least. So I'm able to make some plays. He can't stop me. I end up with some toads, and I ended up taking that one pretty handedly. Game 3, I actually opened with a pretty great hand. I have swap with a couple of frogs in my hands, so I could pitch them and just go in and make a couple of toads. Unfortunately, he was able to go first, and because he was able to go first, he set traps. And he ended up having 2 dimensional barriers. Oh, that's something I forgot to mention. I didn't have any dimensional barriers. Obviously, I would have played it in the main if I had it. For that format, it would have been really good against Zoo. So, yeah, he dimensional barriers me on my first turn, so I stop my play. And he doesn't really kill me. So I have another turn to try to make a play, but and then he deburies me again. And I'm like, okay, you got it, man. Can't do anything. So that was unfortunate. I ended up losing that, so I'm 1-1 at this point. Round 3, I got paired up against Zoo. And I'm winning the roll first time, so I get to go first. Game 1 ended up taking forever once again. This matchup with Zoo is pretty stally in the specific circumstances I kept ending up in. So, once again, I had a barrier statue, and I stalled with it. And then once again, he managed to out it eventually. So, that was the downside of the barrier. It didn't seem to last forever. But this time, I did have Imperial Order to back it up. So, even though he outed the barrier statue by attacking over it, I had this, which I used to stop his barrage. So, I managed to stall with that, and I ended up paying my life points all the way down to 100 with this card. He thought I would kill myself with this. I'm like, no, it just blows itself up. So we got a judge in, and they made the ruling. And then after it blows itself up, a few turns by this point have passed, and I ended up actually in a pretty good position card advantage-wise. I ended up making 2 toads. It was the turn it blew up. I had 2 toads. I attacked with them, did damage. His turn, he activates a soul charge. I let it go through. He pays his life points down to 100 with a soul charge. And then I ended up using both of the toad effects after that to negate the stuff he tried to do with the stuff he soul charged back. And I ended up with one of his zoo monsters, and I used it to make Trident. So I was super hype about that. Then I used my Trident to bait out his Trident's effect, and he didn't have anything after that, because he ended with just a Trident on board after I negated his stuff. And so then I just summoned Ronin Toadin, which was able to attack for game for 100. Because we were both at exactly 100, and this has 100 attack. So that was a pretty sweet end to that duel. So game 2, I don't remember too much. He ended up going first, and I had a flank C, I remember, to stop his play. But I remember he ended up tributing this for his econ that he had, and he had a lot of good responses from my traps. So I would activate a trap to try to summon a Paleo from my grave, and he would chain a card to that to prevent my Paleo from summoning. And he kept having stuff to chain, and he actually ended up having 2 Twin Twisters that he resolved during Game 2, and that was just too much, and he ended up winning, even though I had the flying C to stop his play on his first turn. And then Game 3 went immediately into time because we had taken so long in Game 1, and I opened up with a pretty bad hand, even though I was going first. I couldn't make any plays, and I actually couldn't stop any of his plays either. This was a game where I opened up 2 magic deflectors, and they were both dead. So that was really frustrating. So at this point, I'm down 1-2. Can't lose another match the entire time. So round 4, I ended up getting played against Pendulum Zoo, and I had a much easier time with this compared to Pure Zoo. I suspect that's because it's not as good as Pure Zoo, but he could have just been unlucky. I I don't know the decks well enough because, as I said earlier, I wasn't really playing during this format. So game 1, he drew mostly pendulums. He didn't actually have any zoo cards on his first turn. So I didn't know he was playing zoo at first. He did play a Whiptail later in game 1, which he shouldn't have done because it gave away information. I'll get to that, sorry. Skipping around. So he went first. He ended up pendulum summoning 4, and he summoned a Tornado Dragon and an Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon, which I thought was kind of terrible play because he just used all of his resources to make 2 things which aren't really that good. Like, Tornado Dragon is good against me, but it only destroys 1, and then Absolute just is trash. So, yeah, I thought that was a terrible play. So I ended up outing both of those, and I get him really low on resources, and I have a Toad out on the board. And he ends up summoning a Whiptail and then making a extra deck monster, and he tries to attack into this, even though he's lower attack, because he thinks that the banish effect will banish this without activating. And it's just like, Whiptail activates. There's a colon in the text. Like, read the text, there's a colon. And he just thought it was continuous. He didn't believe me. And I'm like, do you know what problem-solving card text is? We're at the WCQ. How do you not know what problem-solving card text is? So we called a judge over, and he was like, obviously it activates. So I negated the effect by attributing my dupe. And, yeah, that was his last gamble, because that was his only resource left. And yeah, it was pretty dumb, because then I knew he was playing a zoo variant, so I was able to decide correctly. Game 2, he goes first. He makes a Vortex Dragon, which actually was it was a pretty good play, because I couldn't really do very much with the Vortex, but I do play around it. I end up baiting it out. I forgot what I baited it with. I used the Sum Trap that he pretty much had to negate, and then after he used his 1 negate per turn, I was able to activate my Unending Nightmare. And since the effect activates, but it's not a trap activating, the Vortex can't negate it after the first time it's face up. So I was able to just use this to destroy his Pendulum Scales whenever he tried to make scales, and he couldn't Pendulum Summon because of that. But because I'm paying so much life points, I actually ended up in a situation where I had to destroy one of his scales, otherwise he could Pendulum Summon and kill me with a bunch of monsters. So I paid below 2,500, which is the attack of Vortex, and he could have attacked for game, but he's super scared of Mirror Force because I'm playing Paleo, and usually they play like 3 Mirror Force. So he doesn't attack me, even though I don't have a Mirror Force. And after that, the next turn, I'm able to make 2 Toads, and with the Toads out, I ended up just rolling into the game, because I can easily just bait out his Vortex, negate it with my Toad, and then he's got nothing. So after that win, I'm 2-2. Pretty okay. Round 5, I get paired up against a True Draco Zoo variant. So game 1, I won the roll. Didn't do really too much first turn. Had a few decent back rows. And then he ends up summoning a Masterpiece, but he only makes it immune to traps and spells, so I can still auto it with monsters. So nothing too scary. And I end up making NAWCQ, which is immune to monster effects, so he can't blow it up with his Masterpiece. And since his Masterpiece is affected by monsters, I can blow him up with a NAWCQ effect. So I end up doing that and end up winning game 1. Because he put a lot of resources into that play with Masterpiece, and he didn't really have a strong follow-up. Game 2, he goes first, and he does summon the Masterpiece, and I am able to Kaiju it, luckily. I have 2 Kaijus in my hand, but unfortunately this time he drew his zoo part of his deck, which he didn't game one, and his zoos go off, and I don't really have a strong answer for that, so he ends up winning game two. But we were already in time, game two. I actually, game one and two were both kind of long. I don't even really remember them too well, just because they were kind of drawn out. So yeah, we ended up going into time in game two. So he ended up winning game two, which meant it was a draw. So I was 2-2-1, still okay. And then Paleo, round 6, I lose the roll. He goes first, and I don't really even remember this in detail. I just remember that he just kept making plays to play around my cards, basically. And I think I even opened a better hand than him game two, but he was just better at the grind game in the mirror, basically. And so he just built up more resources over time, and he ended up winning 2-0. So that was it for me. I was 2-3-1, and I dropped at that point. But it was pretty fun overall. I was pretty happy with the experience. Maybe next year I'll be more interested in the format, so I'll be more prepared. I just was not having any of Zoo. It did not interest me. And I didn't want to spend so much money to play that deck, which you pretty much had to do to be relevant during that format. So, yeah, that was my deck profile and tournament report. If you guys watched all this, hopefully you enjoyed the video. And if you did, be sure to check out some of my other stuff. I will hopefully be uploading more stuff. Lewis will bug me to do it, so I do want to upload more videos. It's just a matter of, do I want to upload videos more than I want to do other things? So we'll see. No promises, but I'll see what I can do.